Hello and welcome. I am Mary Ann Fessenden from AMTS, and this is the Nutritionist webinar. Our webinar this month is a collaborative effort between Dr. Elena Bonfante, our Italian AMTS distributor, and Dr. Bill Prokop, both of whom are partners in Dairy Innovations Italia. Dr. Bonfante is a veterinary doctor graduated from the University of Bologna, Italy. During her PhD, she spent 7 months at Cornell University, where she began her training in applied dairy nutrition and management through working with dairies throughout the U.S. and Italy. Dr. Bill Prokop is a 1975 graduate of Cornell Ag and Life Sciences and a 1979 graduate of the New York State College of Veterinary Medicine at Cornell University. He has worked as a dairy practitioner for over 40 years with a focus on prevention of clinical diseases through ration formulation and best management practices, with an emphasis on animal welfare. He provides management and nutritional services to dairies and allied industries throughout the U.S. and internationally, and is an advocate of the application of the CNCPS model platform for feeding herds to achieve greater efficiency with less detrimental environmental impact. Together, Bill and Elena formed the Dairy Innovations Group to provide consultative services in nutrition and management directly to dairies, in collaboration with nutritionists and with industry. Today, they will take us on a tour of 3 dairies in Panura, Parma, Italy, as well as the famous PDO region of Parmigiano Reggiano and Grana Padano cheese, and discuss the challenges facing those dairies. Along the way, they will demonstrate how adaptation of Western management technologies can improve dairy efficiency, health, and productivity without threatening the romantic dairy culture for which Italy is known. As a full disclosure on our part, the concept of on-farm webinars seemed fantastic and innovative. In execution, it has presented challenges, primarily in audio quality. This webinar is no exception. The video quality is tremendous, but we will struggle with the audio. In effort to reduce the strain of listening, I have recorded and modified to create a better experience. It is imperfect, and I apologize for that. I will be running English subtitles in an attempt to ameliorate listening pain. Remember to enter your questions in the chat or Q&A windows for answering at the end of the webinar.
Hi, are you interested in knowing more about the Italian dairy market? So you are in the right place, and we start sharing some numbers related to the milk production and dairy cows population in Italy. The first thing you should know about the Italian milk production is that Italy is one of the largest producer country of PDO cheeses. And these imply some restricted rules related to the cheese production, but also to the dairy cows nutrition. And we'll give you some example in the farm visit you are gonna see today. Just to give you an overview, Italy of the Italian production, the 70% is consumed and stay within the country, and 30% milk equivalent is exported all around the world. The dairy cow population counts 1,600,600 cows. And the milk production counts 12.5 million tons of milk per year. As you expected, we are going to visit some farm in Italy, the country surrounded by the Mediterranean Sea. And here we are going to visit some farms in the north of Italy, where you can see we are blessed by a vast and a huge area that allows us to harvest a lot of crops. Here we are blessed by a huge amount of water. We have the Po River that crosses this huge area. And that's why in the north of Italy, we raise the highest amount of dairy cows. So today we are going to bring you to for the first visit in the Cremona area, and in particular in town that is called Castel Gabbiano.
Hi everybody, my name is Bianchessi Mauro. As Elena said, I'm the owner of Spring Farm, and here we are.
Ciao tutti, I'm Bill Prokop. I am Elena's partner in Dairy Innovations, and we are doing one of our routine visits at Spring Farm. And to give you a little background on the farm, we started working with Mauro and his brothers back in 2016 with the understanding that they were looking to improve and implement new technologies and not necessarily change the facility. And so we thought we'd do a walkthrough with you and show how technologies can be adapted, rations can be formulated in order to accommodate existing constraints of facilities and size, and show the improvement that can be made. And so with that, we thought we'd do a walkthrough and give you a taste of dairying Italian style.
That will me to present the farm here, so
yeah, let's walk around.
My farm is 50 years old farm. My dad moved to this village in the 50s, and then he started a dairy farm with his own brothers. Back then they were farming 100. He was able to buy till 100 hectares until he died in 78. And they were managing a dairy farm of 200 cows that was quite big at that time. It was one of the biggest in the area. After my dad died, my brother took up with our uncles, but we didn't agree with them, so we split up in 1988 and we settled Spring Farm since then. We are now farming around 100 hectares of land. Some owned, some rented, and we are milking 320 cows, 320 cows, and we have another 45 dry. As Bill said, you won't see any fancy facilities here because for a different reason we decided not to grow anymore so far, because mostly because of land price is very expensive. Renting land is getting even more expensive.
What's the hectare price for cropland now?
Hectare price for cropland is it goes to 70 to 90,000 euros per hectare, and it dropped in the last years. It was higher 10 years ago. And
so in round figures in US dollars, that's about $50,000 US dollars an acre.
And renting good farmland now takes 1,500 euros a hectare. And then you have to do all the works and the farming. And let you imagine how much is. And another issue is that the manure spreading, the manure management. Now you need to have land. The more cow you add, the more land you have to spread manure on. So main reason we decided not to grow with the cow number anymore is the land. And then some other reason then we can discuss about when we go through the farm.
Historically, nutrient management was not a big issue. That is something now that's
because since EU regulation, they decided we couldn't spread more than a number of international unit of nitrogen on the field. That is gonna be 300 per hectares, I guess, and together with the fertilizer you use. That's why we don't use any fertilizer anymore. You use only manure or the digested manure from the biogas plant that you're gonna see. That allowed us to run the farm without any fertilizer since for 20 years so far. Probably we are not buying any nitrogen or any kind of fertilizer in the farm.
And one of the focuses of Spring Farm is their sustainability. And when we talk sustainability, we're not just talking about the nutrient management side of it, but all the other practices that will enable the farm to exist and produce food now and in decades to come. And so as we look at the system that's involved in sustaining the farm, we want to factor in all of the considerations, okay, of the different enterprises that this farm has taken on in order to assure its sustainability. And Mara alluded to the fact that there's a biogas, a digester. We're going to have to see composted manure that's sold. Again, it's the idea that just because you're a dairy doesn't limit your output to milk. Okay, there are other opportunities that have to be embraced if we're going to stay vibrant in the future.
Yeah. We didn't go for more cows, but we didn't stop in investing money. We went for the biogas plant. We put in the first one in 2010, and with that we put in also a compost operation barn where we make compost that we sell to greenhouses. And then last year we decided to put in another biogas because the first one is going to be shut down in 5 years to keep the farm on that kind of operation too. And the new biogas is going to start producing power next month in September probably.
Okay, let's go to see some cows.
So we're standing in front of Spring Farm close-up group. When Dairy Innovations evaluates a dairy, we try to do it in terms of a systems thinking approach and understand the life cycle of the lactation of the cow. And starting with the cow in the dry stage and understanding the changes that she'll go through during the different stages of physiology, I think is important in terms of meeting her nutrient requirements. And so as you can see, this is a fully depreciated facility, but it's very effective and it works well. The intake of these girls, Elena, is what? Dry matter, do you remember? I've had 28?
Dry matter
Yes.
is around 12
Kilograms.
kilos. So
Okay.
let's say
So,
It's calculating for 12, but there is some more.
and because there are heifers and cows mixed, we have to have the challenge here is knowing that the intakes are going to vary quite a bit.
In Jersey.
And we have some jerseys and crosses as well to add to the mix. Now, when we started working with the farm, we wanted to implement an anionic diet in the close-up to control hypocalcemia and also to get the benefits of increasing metabolizable protein, which is critical in this group, through the use of products that are both anionic and will stimulate the MP output of the rumen. We elected to use Biogas Plant, and it's worked very well. But because of the herd size, we couldn't practically justify a far-off diet and a close-up diet. So what this is a far-off diet, and then there's a top dressing to make it a close-up diet. There's also an addition back to the far-offs of an ingredient as part of the close-up diet. But there is top dressing as well here to meet their needs. And it is proven to be highly effective. We've reduced the number of fresh cow problems dramatically as a result of this in terms of retained placentas and ketosis and DAs. And for any dairy, eliminating all of those unnecessary fresh cow problems and any intervention in the fresh cow window with their nutritional therapeutics, I think, is paramount. And that's paid off very well for us here. And you can see by looking at these girls, they're happy. And we can find lots of ways of improving, That's critical.
The transition, this pre-fresh group is the reason why I started to work with Bill, Elena, and the AMTS, because I was using anionic salt even before I met them, and I started to work with them, but probably not at the right amount. And the fat of the MP that we thought already, I didn't measure it correctly before, and I wasn't feeding enough protein to get to the need to reach the need of these cows. And since I started with BioChlor and following the right amount, I feed half in the ration and half as a top fed to these to only the pre-fresh group, to reach about 600-700 grams a day of BioChlor. And then I use some other product on top, like sugar, another source of protein, and some protective fat, the calcium soap or soy oil, just to improve the ovaries and the future reproductive performance.
Mauro was one of the first in Europe to embrace feeding essential fatty acids in the transition in fresh cows to improve reproduction. He saw it work. Unfortunately, at that time, the product was from the US, was Essentium, and now we can't bring that into the EU. So he's adapted his.
I had a local supplier that I told him to do something like, so he started to produce the calcium soap of soy oil. It's a 70% of fat, probably, because you need more calcium to keep it together, and that works. It works for cows and for the reproduction. Any other things? System works. Cows get clean even in the hot weather. Clean up good. The last test I had after calving, I had only 1-2 with metritis, but you just need a shot of prostaglandin to get rid of it. It's not anything. And I seldom treat cows after calving. I don't wanna. I quit being aggressive with treatment after calving. I leave the cow goes, and then I go check the cows if she's really in trouble or she got some trouble, evident problem. But I don't find any problem. I can say that last month I had three milk fever cases. Then with Elena we went to see the ration. We had the ration tested, and we noticed that it was more moist. That it was more humid, more moisture in the ration, and the DCAD was positive, no. And probably my TMR guy, my brother, changed one of the silage in the ration without telling me, and it was more humid, more moist. It was higher in moisture, and that made us some problem in the ration, but we fixed it with new ration, and this month we didn't have any problem of that kind.
So Mauro is writing a book. You can get a first edition. It's called Dairy Farming with Your Relatives, The Benefits, and Other Fiction. Okay? And so if any of you would like a copy of the signed copy, Mauro has those available.
So I will show you a little bit the cows, and then we'll move to the fresh pen. Here the feed bank and the cooling system. This is the feeding area, and on the back they have all the room they need for resting. I will show you.
But they're clean.
Very good.
Okay, but they're clean. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah. But see, what I look at is the legs, the hocks and all.
The bedding is dry and clean, and if they need, they can use this space outside as well. But I find them most of the time inside, even if you can see it's a little bit short, but it's well good.
I'm not aggressive at all at calving time. The cows, 95% of the cow calve by themselves inside here. I get up in the morning and I find calves around and cows that are there taking care of their calves. And that's probably another reason to have a good transition, because the more you, I mean, in my opinion, the more you bother the cows at calving time, the more problem you're gonna have. Calving is a natural process, no? You just have to wait.
Absolutely.
That's good.
She's there. I didn't touch her. Probably not. She cleaned up and she's there eating, drinking, and doing good. This one calved in last week. The same. No intervention. I didn't touch her with anything. She just calved in and started to milk and didn't have any need of treatment or whatever. And it is up.
And so this is where they go after calving, heifers and cows, the postpartum group, and they're here for an average of what, 2 to 3 weeks?
Yeah, more than that, because I'm stuck with cows. I can move them with the rate I would like, because if I move cow from here, I have to move cow from the other group, no? So from 50 days, 60. Yeah, so we adjust the ration for that. This is an effort, a second calver that need to be moved then probably next week. That's another cow that calved in last week. The third one, the one in the middle, is a 7 calver, calved in 4 days ago. No sign of milk fever, nothing.
So longevity, even in a facility that's not ideal, we can optimize enough of the comfort factors and the nutritional factors that longevity is not a problem. Health and sustainability for these girls is not a problem. We've stopped in front of the far off dry cow pen, and that's attached to the late lactation cows that we just walked by. But the point is, this is our far off group, and you can see it's small, and this is the base diet that's in front of them, to which other ingredients are added when it's delivered to the poultry fence.
And they invested in cooling system as well.
Yeah, as with the close-ups, the far-offs get soaked, and they have a fan overhead to move air. So we're stopping in front of the pen that houses the pluriparous high cows, stage of lactation. Again, the cows are soaked, there's fans. TMR is similar in terms of its consistency as you saw before. And if we take a look at the girls, despite the heat, they look quite comfortable and productive.
These are the group where I start to breed them back. I have a voluntary day waiting period of 90 days now in this group, because going 3X I saw that didn't have to be such in a hurry to have them bred back. It works. I have now 28 points of PR.
21-day pregnancy rate.
Since November 2020. It's 28, both in the first calf and older. And that's it. The only things I do here is breeding. I'm on a double off-sim program, so it works.
We'll go down and come back across the valley.
There's nothing fancy. They're just cows that milk and do their job. I know that can do better, but right now I find it hard to invest money in new facilities because there is so much pressure on our industry, and I want to see what's going on, and maybe in 3-4 years I'm gonna decide what to do. Or if I'm gonna go for a new barn and go to 500 cows, if I will find some more land or stay here and see what is gonna be. The son that seems he likes dealing in the farm and doing chores in the farm.
So you have to stay here longer, Mauro.
Yeah.
So this is another example as all the facility can be modified to improve the welfare of the animal. You see that the wall were took off, okay, in order to improve the ventilation of this barn. So we are going to meet again our guests.
So we're standing in front of two upright storage facilities, which are very prevalent in the EU to prevent shrink, control losses, and one of them is a molasses tank. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. The other is the mineral mix that we have custom made, and again, like so many changes, what's remarkable about this mineral mix is not what's in it, which in itself is smartamine and methionine analogs and fermentin, things like that, but all the things that we took out when we started working with the dairy, the B vitamins and other non-protected ingredients that and lower levels of phosphorus, things that are not needed, okay? And this is where there's money to be saved and again improve the balance for the farm. So just point that out.
Since I started to use minerals at that rate, I lower feed problem and cows are doing much better.
So now we are going on the feeding area, so where the feeder comes every morning to prepare the TMR.
Or
Here,
as close as he ever comes.
yes, here we have the banks. Now they are ready for the next. Here the TMR mixer.
This is the ryegrass, this year rye cereal silage.
This is the ryegrass 2021. They used to cut it
even earlier this year.
Yeah, they chop it very early this year, but the digestibility is better than I ever seen. So around 70s
As a 30-hour KD.
KD, yes.
2
hours,
but
and you have
is that
digestibility.
25?
Smells great.
25 this one.
Yes.
I wanted it a little bit drier, but
That'll make milk.
Huh?
That makes milk.
Yeah, when we use it, we tend to drop in the soil holes, so fiber byproduct, and we give them intake. Here we are in the feeding area where the cereals and the concentrates are. Here we have some.
This looks like cornmeal, and it's essentially is, except this is the byproduct of the production of polenta, where they take the harder starch from the kernel, the dent, if you will, and this is the starch that's refused, and it's sold as a byproduct, and we're feeding it here to the cows.
funny thing is that the starch in this is more digestible than the cornflakes.
Yeah, and we're gonna,
Those kind of cornflakes.
this is
That kind of cornflakes.
the 7-hour KD of the steam flake corn in Italy typically is not real good. Again, nothing exotic. Good old-fashioned soy hulls.
Straw.
Soybean meal from South America.
I was lucky last year that I was able to renew the contract at last year price. I'm saving a
That's
lot of
good.
money with this.
Yeah.
Extruded Cortal extruded soybean, half fat,
7%.
7%.
This is extruded soybean meal produced here in Italy, very high quality and very high digestibility. We even use some of this in the transition group to get the MP up high enough. Okay, there's a certain amount of this in there. It works very well.
This is rice, some byproduct from rice milling, rice mill, and we use it a little bit in the biogas, and probably my brother started to feed some to the effort. I have to find out.
So this is a very good point. When you have a digester on the farm for biogas and you want it to work optimally, you have to recognize that besides your conventional ruminants that you're feeding to make milk, now you have a concrete cow that you're feeding to make gas, okay? And having such a facility affords the opportunity to capture inexpensive ingredients like this. And in fact, corn silage is double cropped here, and one of those two crops is dedicated to the digester, okay? So these are all strategies to improve productivity and profitability going forward. So just a word here to explain some of the Western type architecture compared to the traditional European style dairies. Mauro spent time as a Cornell Dairy Fellows and went through the program with Mike Van Amberg and acquired insight into structures that we now take for granted of optimizing ventilation, which is something historically heifer facilities have never done well. And he was the first in this area to put in a structure like this, and was told by all of his well-intentioned neighbors that the animals would die of pneumonia because of all the fresh air, which sounds pretty ridiculous, but this is a testimony of the blending of the technologies that work with facilities that are still sustainable and will carry on.
Don't want to sound, how do you say, but I never had a pneumonia case on this bar.
Bragging rights.
Bragging.
Do you use sex semen, Mauro?
No, not at all. No, because I don't have, I don't want to grow, and so I don't need extra effort. I have more than enough using 80% traditional semen, and then I breed all the rest to beef. So you can see some beef crossbred, blue Belgian blue here in this group. I keep them for beef, some beef for us, and some goes to the beef market.
So, just for comparison's sake, this is a fairly typical way of covering bunks here in Italy. Plastic and then covered with stone. It's heavier than pea gravel, and shovel it off, recapture it for the next time. You shovel it off, yes. But it does a beautiful job of holding down and excluding the air because you have a uniform amount of pressure applied to the surface, and it works very well. So just again for audience in the Americas that may not have seen this before.
Here we are in front of the first biogas we put in 2010, and what can I say? That's the separator for the digested manure. We use the solid to bed the freestall, because it's digested, and we did some tests, and the bacteria count is really low, so we use it like that. If you want some figures, I can say that this plant paid in 3 years.
Paid itself off.
In 3 years, and now the income is 70% from the dairy and 30% from the biogas and the compost barn.
These digesters are under a contract with the government to produce for 15 years.
These were signed for 15 years contract at 28 cents per kilowatt, and this is a 250 kilowatt plant, and that is gonna end in 2015. Then we'll see what they're gonna tell us, if we can keep using it at a lower rate, at a lower price, lower.
When does it end?
2025.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I said you're done.
Yeah.
In this area, there are bunker silos. Some of them are used for feed for cattle, but the idea being the digesters have dedicated feeds as well, and storage of those is done out here in proximity to the digesters.
We will do some research on the digester and on the manure, the biogas manure, because there's a company that wanna bring here an equipment, a sort of equipment that is gonna dry them up with pressure and a little bit of heat, and they are gonna make a solid fertilizer that is gonna go sold into garden shop, and
They're going to treat the compost.
no, not this one.
You're
The
gonna
one,
take the
the
raw
one that,
manure,
the one that is
digested
coming
manure.
from the digester.
Oh, okay.
And here what we have?
This is the compost barn. This is how the compost looks after 2-3 months of maturation and of stirring and the fermentation. The aerobic one, the aerobic fermentation,
Right.
and is almost inert. Nothing grows on this one. There's no seed inside there.
It kills off.
Yeah, they eat. Some is killed in the digester, and the rest is killed here.
What temperature do you achieve when the compost?
It goes to 60 sometimes,
Yeah.
depending on the season.
Centigrade.
It depends from the moisture.
Yeah.
But our client want it a little bit drier than we used to make it, so we don't pour the liquid on top anymore. Because through this machine you can also have a different kind of moisture, no? Because from these things you can pour some liquid manure on top, and then it's mixed by the machine.
And that liquid was coming as
Is coming from the pit.
Oh, direct.
So you can also work on the nutrients.
So with this one you close the cycle.
This is the solid that goes in the digester. Manure and some silage that is not good for the cows, or the one on top, the one on the side. So we can feed the cows with the best part of the silages and throw the rest in the digester.
What's the time for the compost to cycle and be ready?
3-4 months.
And then you empty it fully or
No,
partially?
we usually 2 times a year we emptied it. Yes. Then we started to market also another product last year, 2 years ago. We mix the solid from the digester with calcium carbonate, and we sell to other farmers for bedding. We bring it to 50% moisture, poly with calcium carbonate, with limestone.
I mean that line. So
And there's some farms that come.
we've had a brief walkthrough of Spring Farm. One family, 3 brothers, 1 operation, 3 enterprises. And we will summarize with specifics of ration specification and other numbers quantifying output and management. But this gives you a feel for what a sustainable dairy operation in Italy will look like. You want to add?
No, I mean, as a dairy farmer, I regret not having brand new facilities like my cousin did, but as a businessman, probably that was the right choice.
Thank you, Mauro, for your time.
Thank you to you, and see you.
Grazie mille.
And you know how much Marianne loves jerseys, so a little bonus for her. So let's move now a little bit south, nearby Cremona City, in Robecco d'Olio, where we are going to visit a dairy farm that produces milk for the Grana Padano cheese production. So here you can see the area where the Grana Padano is produced, and the milk that is used for this cheese production has to follow some rules that are pretty restrictive. For example, in the feeding management, we have to take in account the fact that it's not allowed to use canola, for example, or other byproducts like distillers. And this has a difference compared to the Parmigiano Reggiano milk production. We are allowed to use silages like corn silage or different grass silages. So now let's give a look to the Panizza dairy farm. We have 2 buildings for the dairy cows. The group 1, 2, 3 that is the old barn owned by the producers for a long time, 50 years, and the group 5 and 4 that is related to a farm that was bought a few years ago. The rest is all related to old facilities that host the replacement and the dry cows. This farm produce an average now of 43 liters of milk, and it peaks during the winter time to 50 liters of milk. So now let's go to see what the producer have to say.
Yesterday we were at Spring Farm with the Anchesi family, and we showed you a traditional Italian family dairy operation that did not update their facilities but chose to assure their sustainability by developing additional enterprises on the dairy operation. Today we're at the farm of Patricia and Luca Panizza. This was a traditional parlor dairy, and they chose to, a few years ago, invest in robots to assure their sustainability for the future of the dairy industry in Italy. And we're going to do a walkthrough of their facility and discuss with them some of the challenges they've had and frustrations and successes. And their daughter Martina is with us this morning to help translate. So with that, I will turn it over to Elena.
Hi to everybody. As Bill said, today we are in the Cremona area, in the Panizza's farm, and we are gonna see and have a walk around their dairy. So this is a 500 cow dairy. They have both systems, so the old facility with the milking parlor, and now it is milking roughly 200 cows and 300 cows that are under robots. So we are going to talk with Patrizia and Luca, the owners, why they made this decision and this transition, and which were the challenges of this transition that they faced during the process. But let's now have a little tour in their dairy, and so we can understand, how is it managed. So here we are in the robot barn, the first one that was converted in robot from a milking parlor. There are two groups with two robots each in the head of the barn, and they are fed, of course, with a PMR and a pellet in the robot. They now are using only one kind of pellet that contains some starch, proteins, and soluble fiber. And we'll see the composition later if you are interested. During these years, so far, they have been using this farm for 2.5 years with the robots. They have improved the ventilation as well, as you can see. And they have also sparkling close by the feeding area. So this is the old barn, and they have moved this group as well to the robot system. So we can see here as well two robots they created and they covered the waiting area in front of the robot in order to facilitate the access to the robot, to the two robots. Here you can see they have also the ventilation system that is working. It's an old one, yes, can be implemented, but still this group is the most productive as well. So it works pretty well. The temperature here is now averaging 33 degrees during the day, and we are not going below 20 at all during the summertime. So you see that they are standing, eating. Some of them are lying down in the stalls, bedding with straw, and the stalls are well used. So here they have also a little friend that helps them to push up feed. It does it 6 times per day, and is very helpful, most of all during the night time, where few people are around here, but he can still do his work and make the feed closer to the cows even during the night time.
I'm asking why they went to robots, okay? From traditional dairy. So that's which question she's going to ask them, and they're going to answer.
We moved to the robotic milking system 3 years ago. We decided to move in this direction because we think that the cows can perform better on a productive and reproductive point of view, because the robotic system carry to better welfare compared to the old milking system, that is system with the milking parlor 2X. Today we keep a group of 300 cows in the milking parlor because the
facilities, the old facilities, doesn't allow us to make a transition to the robotic system. This in front of us is a barn that we bought 4 years ago, that was very close to the old one, in which we work from 50 years. We are actually the third generation that works here, and this building in front of us was perfect for the transition to robot. The most important challenge that we faced in the transition process was to make sure that the cows were not affected by the works that was necessary for change, to the milking parlor, to the robot. So this was a long work, but the goal was to don't create stress in excess during the works. And the moment to which we paid more attention was for sure the adaptation period. So every day, beside the milking parlor activity, we carried every cow in the robot. She was eating twice a day the pellet to get used to the machine. Only after 10 days, when we see that the cows was not scared and got inside without problem, with the tech service of Lely, we decided to start the milking with the robot. The first period is for sure the moment where more challenging. The timing and the time that we spent was high, but we noticed that the cows adapted more better than we did, because what scared the most is always the cow, is she gonna get milked by herself, but they learn actually better and faster than us. The other thing is then read the data and understand when it's better to act and to intervene based upon the number that the machine tells us. Why the robotic milking system and not 3X? We produce milk for the Grana Padano, and the rules of the Grana Padano doesn't allow to milk 3X with the conventional milking parlor, but allows the voluntary milking with robotic system. Our choice was driven by this rule, but well accepted, because we have been highly paid back by the increased welfare level in the group. If I can add, we moved from 4 robots to 6, and probably in the next 5 years from 6 to 10. So when you move to the robot, was the situation better, the same, or worse, considering the people management? The number of employees is the same. What we have done was to change the rules of the milkers that now cover different rules. We have to say that the work with the robot is completely different on the management. You don't have time when the cow is empty and full, but the groups are always full, and the work has to be done in harmony with the cows. And first of all, you have to have workers that make the work respecting the timing of the cows and the resting time and the movement in the group. And then the robotic system take the worker to have a more relaxed life with more flexible schedule compared to the old milking system. So we are not moving back. Who is taking care of the feedings and who produce the crops destined to the cows?
Il lavoro nei campi, quindi la gestione degli alimenti.
Sorry.
So the agronomic aspect, I am the responsible for with other 3 people that collaborate with me. It is not easy because I'm not able to dedicate enough attention to the crops because I had to divide myself between the dairy and the fields. But let me say that we have created a great team with my wife, my daughter, and the collaborators. So we try to compensate some time loss and attention to the dairy when I'm not here. So the people that stays compensate for my absence in a great way. So, which is the most important factor in the crops management, crop quality? To me, it's the tempestivity to prevent the weather, the tempestivity for the seeding and harvesting, and the prevention of the weeds. Has the work of the family member changed with the transition to the robot? So considering the time spent in the dairy, we actually increased a little bit the time spent to check the alarms given by the robot. But at the same time, we trained the workers. So when we are not here, they are able to understand the problem of the machine and solve it even without us to be here. But no matter what, I keep giving order and he executes. As in every respectable family, the woman is the boss. Now we are gonna move further south in the Parma area, in the Emilia-Romagna region. So in this area we are moving to the area of the Parmigiano Reggiano, where the most important cheese all around the world is produced. And here you can see that there are natural limitations that define the Parmigiano Reggiano area. For example, in the north, the Po River, and on the east side, the Reno River. This area is characterized by the production of milk that is used to produce the famous Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. And as probably you know, one of the main characteristics of this production is that it's not possible to use fermented feed. So the cows are fed only with dry hay. And you will see better during the visit. So now we are gonna move south in the southern part of Parma on the mountains, and we are gonna visit the Ancelotti's dairy farm. As you can see, it is on a fantastic background. It's surrounded by mountains and hills, and it is close by a car racing circuit and the main river of the area. So let's start the visit.
Ciao tutti, we are here in Viazzano, Italy at the farm of Sergio and Roberto Enchilati. They're going to give us a tour of their operation. This is a Parmigiano Reggiano region dairy. They're going to explain the challenges and restrictions and opportunities in producing milk for the production of Parmesan Reggiano cheese. So Sergio and Roberto are describing their management system, a single dry cow group on a bedded pack with access to a very generous exercise lot. Now I'll go over more specifics of their system in detail going forward here.
I want people to notice is they soak the dry cows for cooling, okay? And look at the comfort of the bedded pack. It's not crowded, it's dry, and it's deep, soft bedding, which we know whether it's sand or manure solids is what cows prefer. When was the last time you cleaned out that pack?
7 anni fa.
7 years.
E viene lavorata 2 volte al giorno. Con l'erba. Periodo invernale viene aggiunto del farro.
So again, not conventional, single group. That's the challenge that we're confronting, to make a transition diet for them so that we satisfy the needs, but don't spend too much money doing it, and effect better transition into the fresh cow pen, which is why they engaged us. Let's move on. And these cows, make sure we get them. I want these. Just to demonstrate what body condition score looks like in this group.
This is the area where the dry cows can go during the day, even if they most of the time prefer to stay under the shade, and this prefer to manage the pregnant.
In front of the fresh cow pen, the natural progression from the dry cows. The pens in the back obviously are not fresh cows, that's young stock. Show those. Here we are coming to the 3 stalls with the fresh cows. Ask, what's the bedding? Straw and lime?
Chiede la lettiera come viene fatta.
Every Friday we renew the bedding with a mix of limestone, water and straw. 1 straw, 1 limestone and 2 water. This is the ratio. We don't have any RPs in this group. We check the pH of the bedding. We are always above 9.
We started working with Enchiladas with their young stock several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, they've recognized the benefits of feeding the heifers for better growth. These girls were calving in at 22 months, 37 kilos, doing awesome. And so even some of the Western ideas of having animals freshened earlier can be played out with aggressive managers, even in Italy.
So the important thing to note in this dairy, as with all Parmesan Reggiano dairies, it is a completely dry TMR. The use of fermented feeds is not allowed. The concern is that the spore transfer through the milk would destroy the cheese from gas production. The other restriction with Parmesan Reggiano is the milking is only 2x, and that's because this milk is taken directly to the creamery and will be converted into cheese within 24 hours. We'll now walk down and Elena will pan the cows and the feed, and you can see firsthand what this looks like. Since taking over this dairy in 1987, Roberto and Sergio have made it a focus to continuously improve the cow comfort factors on the dairy. Improve ventilation, cow soaking, major improvement to make the surface smooth for the cows to eat off of, make it easier for them to consume all of TMR, are evident here. So the question we have for them is, what's next?
Today we are working on the project of sex and beef, in which I believe very much, and keep increasing the production with less animals total. Today we produce 3,800 tons of milk with 540 animals. My goal is to reduce the animal below 500 and keep the same production.
What is your current production and fat and protein in the herd?
Chiede qual è la produzione attuale media e le componenti, quindi grasso e proteina.
Today we are producing 3.87 butter fat, and on the casing we are producing 2.67 average all around the year, and the production goes from 44 to 41 all year round.
In the Parmesan Reggiano consortium, you are limited by quota to a certain level of production. You are at the top of your quota now, correct?
With 3,800 tons we are on top, so I could buy more, but it's not my intention.
For you to buy more quota, someone has to be willing to sell it to you, correct? There's no quota that the consortium just sells. So they are controlling the volume of production through the quota system here to regulate price and also make sure that they have enough milk for Parmesan Reggiano cheese. Okay, and it's proven so far to be a very effective system.
I don't believe in exponential growth in general of the whole businesses. We have the luck that Parmigiano Reggiano gives a high margin to the activity. This farm works with a 25% margin, and this is a lot. So then there is the life quality for the workers and of the animal. Why should I risk all this? In order to look for growth, exponential growth.
So we're here standing at the auto feeders, and calves are brought into each pen and they stay there until weaned, basically, as a group. And this is the youngest group in front of us now. They come here after about 14 days being in a hutch on bottles and then are put on the auto feeder. These calves are a little under the weather because they've just been dehorned, and so they're not quite as active as they normally would be. But we had advocated this system several years ago. We started with mob feeders, and now we've graduated to computerized auto feeders, and the Enchiladas are ecstatic with the results.
They stay in that pen through the entire process. This is a wean pen. They've been weaned about a month now. And again, you can see the benefits that they're getting on these girls by feeding the ad lib source of milk and the starter, the formulation of which we provided based upon work that was done at Cornell with Mike Van Amberg and Rodrigo Molonis. Okay. Roberto just informed us that at weaning, they're eating 3 kilos of the starter that we formed.
So those are other two groups of calves of different age. They are fed with the auto feeder. They undergo a program that feed them at least 8 liters the first week they are there till 16 liters with a milk that is 27% proteins, 22 fat at a concentration of 15%.
So now we've moved to the wean calf pens, anywhere from 4 to 10 months of age. These pens have access to the outside for exercise, and we'll take a closer look and evaluate what we see.
So we have incredible stature. Condition, maybe a little more than adequate, but just awesome calves.
Si sa che devi vedere. Ma no, veramente.
This is an example of their hay that they produce. Of course, they buy also some from the outside, but as you can see, the quality and the color of the product that the heifers has in front of them, and of course for the lactating cow diet, everything is put in a TMR mixer and chopped shortly in order to increase the dry matter intake.
So as we wrap up our tour of Italy, I want to take a moment to thank our host and our tour guide, our partner Dairy Innovations Italia, Elena Bonfante, for sharing with us a taste of dairy Italian style. And I thought it'd be important just to summarize the Dairy Innovations philosophy of management intervention with regard to, in this instance, transition programs. And, quite simply, we embrace a systems approach of management intervention. And what that essentially means is we try to look at the big picture and make sure that the solution that we're implementing today isn't going to have unintended consequences down the road, days, weeks, months from now. And when dealing with problems on the dairy, we try to use a root cause analysis and getting the big picture and making sure the solutions that are implemented are not just going to have an effect locally, but more globally on the operation. The old joke is that the only tool you have is a hammer. You tend to see every problem as a nail. I think it rings true a lot of us, what we've experienced on dairies. The emphasis of non-nutritional, that is the cow well-being aspects of management, can't be overstated. And as Rick Grant at Minor Institute, the people there have quantified, letting a cow be a cow is probably the best lesson we can take home if we implement technologies. Now, the hallmark of successful transition has always been the mitigation of hypocalcemia, which has been seen as a gateway disease to a lot of fresh cow problems. Contain placenta, metritis, ketosis, TAs, you know the drill. But that may not be the root cause. And I don't have time to go into it, but I just want to suggest that there's research forthcoming that may shed a lot of light on cause and effects of periparturient disease with respect to hypocalcemia, and specifically with regard to the fact that immune activation, that is inflammation or response, probably to a lipopolysaccharide penetration into the cow's system at the time of calving, may initiate the cascade of problems culminating in severe hypocalcemia and breast cancer problems. And Les Baumgart, Iowa State, and his team is doing a lot of work, as are the guys at University of Italy, Trevisi, Bertoni, I'm sure there's others. So this is exciting. More to follow. And lastly, I just wanted to emphasize that as you saw in the facilities, there are new facilities, there are old facilities. There is nothing to stop the implementation of good management practices. Things don't have to be perfect to affect change and move forward. So, we'll look at a ration, but the driver behind the rations is a philosophy that, again, we're looking at the dry period and that initial fresh period as a management intervention window. We're always starting out with the cow comfort considerations to optimize dry matter intake, and it gets back to the stocking density. And in light of the fact that LPS challenge may be a tremendous contributor to hypocalcemia and fresh cow disease, we're looking more closely at reminding people about the importance of hygiene, and this gets into stocking density. We embrace the decad theory. We go anionic prepartum, or we go swing it postpartum as high as we can, somewhere at 350 to 400. We use sodium bicarb, and if we can't get to the levels we want, or if we're in a heat stress situation, we'll oftentimes use a product like Decad Plus to get the potassium levels up, assuming the product is available in that part of the world. A disclaimer here, I'm not mentioning products as advertising. People always ask me, what do you use? Okay, so I'm sharing with you the products that we've found available and have used successfully. And not all products are available in the world. The negative decad, we go with BioFlora, and I'll say more about that in a minute. We target metabolizable protein to be 1,200 grams as a minimum, given the demand of the fetus after 190 days of gestation, and then mammogenesis that's going to kick in later on, about 260 days carry calf. It's critical that we get metabolizable protein up so that we don't deplete dammed reserves. Bioflora, which we use anionically, has a fermentin effect, which increases the escape of feed proteins, and so we get a metabolizable protein boost. That's how we choose to use it. We certainly supplement with high-quality bypass proteins, such as soy plus, less perhaps Cortal extra soy, in Italy. We do look at amino acid optimization specifically with regard to thionine to get a 1.18 grams per mcal, and we'll use Metasmart or similar analog products rather than a protected thionine such as Smartum. I'm talking now with close-up. Postpartum, certainly products like Smartum or other valid protected methionine sources could be considered. We do embrace the idea that feeding essential fatty acids proves to foster the immune system through this time and ultimately enhances reproductive performance postpartum. And so we will use protected salts of essential fatty acids, and the product we use is soy or protected soybean oil, Sensium. Again, depending upon what the regulations are, antioxidant restrictions, it may or may not be available, but even when it's not available, we usually find someone creative to produce a product that will perform comparably in that particular region of the world. And finally, in light of the LPS challenge that we're talking about that may contribute to hypercalcemia, we focused aggressively on feeding gastrointestinal adjuncts to help protect the gut against the invasion of LPS components. Products, yeast products such as Salmonex have proved beneficial in our hands, as well as the concept of microbial terroir when you have severe pathogen challenge and you cannot get it under control as quickly as possible. Mitigation by feeding a competing bacillus that will suppress the Clostridium and possibly Salmonella coli, other pathogens in the environment. But this is a very farm-specific approach where you're culturing all sources of pathogens on the farm to derive a bacillus that will work, but it's a valid technology. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this up real quick. I think this is what keeps us all going. When a producer shows you something like this, and you see the progress they've made in milk productions, with the highs and the lows, heat stress, knocking down production, rallying back, but our focus is always continuous improvement. This is from meats to dairy, and walked, and you can see the progress that they've made over the years. And I'm very proud. Okay, so let's jump into rations, if I can negotiate this. So this is prepartum diet from Bianchesi, and I'm in total time is of the essence, so I'm going to show this quickly because I think it embraces our philosophy. Recognize that a herd like Enchiladas cannot use the technologies that Bianchesi can because Parmigiano Reggiano has such restrictions on feeds, for good reason perhaps, but in any event, where the valid technologies can be implemented, this is an example of what we've done, and you've heard Mauro's success story. There's nothing fancy about this diet. The uniqueness of it is, though, we have a far-off diet here. Oops. And again, straw, soy, biochlor, mineral mix, and silage. So that the far-off diet is assembled and fed. There is biochlor in it. It is slightly anionic. The reason we did that, there's multiple reasons, one of which is to get the fermentin effect to boost metabolizable protein, as we said, but also the fact that the herd isn't big enough to run close-up and far-off separate TMR mixes. And you heard Mauro express his frustration with the feeder, his brother, taking poetic license to make changes without authorization. So let's eliminate the number of opportunities for change. So we use the base mix, and on top of that, we add white corn and hotel bypass soy, more biochlor to get the decat where we want it. This is a protected soy, sugar, and again, there's no magic here. We get an empty supply, pre-fermentin of 1281. If we look at what the emulation of the fermentin effect is in the diet, fermentin that's me. There we go. 1325. So we've kicked up about 50 grams of metabolizable protein. Again, you can't model that, but it gives me an idea that I'm going to be over 1,300 grams at this level of intake. And I converted this from kilograms back to what I jokingly call real numbers, not to sound like the bourgeois American, but for the friends back home that don't want to do the math in their head. And again, going down through this, there's no magic to it at all. We've got sugar at 7%. I love sugars. I love the butyric acid effect of rumen. It helps energize the rumen. Starch is 17.58 in preparation for the fresh cow diet, which will be in the mid-20s. So if you use the 10-point swing from pre-fresh to fresh as an adaptation maximum, we're within that standard. But more important is the fermentable starch as a percent of the dry matter. Here it's 14.73, and we'll be going to something just around 20 after the freshen. So you can see we're keeping that within the range that is perceived to be optimum. DCAD is minus 13, and that's monitored every other week when Ellen is on dairy, part of 10. This is a low calcium diet, 0.48, and we emphasize magnesium as something that should be maintained at least above 0.4, just because it seems like magnesium, whether it's the quality of magnesium coming in as magnesium oxide, and in many cases we're using magnesium chloride as well, but the magnesium oxide products are so variable, and magnesium is so easily competed with by other cations for absorption that I liked walking on the higher side. The salt in the diet is 0.39, and again, that contributes tremendously to the anionic effect, and that's coming from the fermentant side of the equation. But the numbers are here, and I know there's not time enough at this point to go into a lot of this. I think having this tour has prompted me to suggest to Tom that we should dedicate one of these sessions to discussing the new advances in transition cattle strategy management. So, with that, again, I want to thank Elena for an outstanding job giving us a taste of Italy. And I'll turn this back over to Marianne.
Thank you, Bill and Elena. I really enjoyed the focus you made on dry cow management. It is truly setting the cow up for success or failure. I hope there will be plenty of opportunity for discussion. Before we move to questions, I have a few housekeeping details. My tremendous gratitude to Bill and Elena, both of whom readily helped me sort out issues this month. Also, many thanks to introducing us to the inimitable Mauro Bianchesi, the hugely aware and wise Luca and in charge Patrizia Panizza, and the brave Martina, and the brother duo of silent Roberto and spokesperson Sergio Ancelotti. We commend these producers for their willingness and transparency. For some of us, this is the only way to get to Italy and see farms, and we are grateful. Bill, in turn, passes on his thanks not only to Elena, but to Daniel Smethy, their partner in Dairy Innovations Hungary, for his tremendous assistance on his journeys this past month. Maybe we can look forward to a tour of Hungarian dairies. Relative to the issues we had with producing this webinar, our next webinar will be a return to a more conventional presentation format. On September 9, we will be joined by Dr. Heinrich Spangenberg of Westside Enterprises and Westside Consulting in South Africa. Heinrich has spent over 30 years in the animal science industry as an academic and commercial nutritionist focusing on research, product development, and commercial applications of research. Previously working with Meadow Feeds, Molotech Feeds, and most recently AFGRI Animal Feeds, Heinrich has directed technical feed sales whilst lecturing and helping develop the animal production curriculum at the Free State University of Technology in South Africa. In his present position at Westside, Heinrich oversees all technical support and sales and offers consultation to provide technical support to find optimal ways of using latest science and technology to provide innovative animal production solutions. Register to join us for a 9 a.m. or a 6 p.m. webinar by visiting the agmodelsystems.com webpage and looking under the Nutritionist 2021 webinar tab for the proper webinar sign-up button. I am thankful for my co-hosts who share the task of fielding questions and bring global insight to our webinars. The webinars are organized and produced by AMTS USA and Global. In the morning webinar, we were obviously joined by Elena and Bill outside of their usual roles as co-hosts. We were also delighted to be joined by our distributor in Turkey, Dr. Huday Kavustran. In the afternoon, I was joined by my longtime collaborator, Paula Turillo of Afina, who hosts a series as El Webinar del Nutritionista. She receives support from Rock River Lab in Argentina, ably assisted by Paula Alanes translating. We are especially thankful to generous sponsors who make it possible for us to get great speakers and manage the program. We thank our gold sponsors, Arm & Hammer Animal and Food Production, #ScienceHearted, the Canola Council of Canada. Learn more about feeding canola at canolamazing.com. Adina, experts in animal nutrition with expertise in plant bioactives, and Protecca, transforming the future of farm animal health. Our silver sponsors are Ajinomoto, Superior Nutrition through Amino Acids, and Virtus, both of whom have sponsored us from the start. Also, the Forage Analysis Labs of Dairyland Laboratories and Dairy One, both with affiliates around the world. Adiseo, Ruminant Nutrition Solutions to ensure animal performance, and micronutrients, feeding the future. Our bronze sponsors are AminoMax, Purdue Agribusiness, Origination Inc., Vallejo, Balchem, and the Milk Group. Each of these companies support education and research worldwide. We hope that you consider them in your formulation decisions. Following is a recording of both the morning and afternoon webinar question sessions. So thank you all. At this point, please open up your mics, Elena, Bill, and Hudai. I want to just let our attendees know that if you have a question, I will not be able to call on you. Sound is clearly an issue. But if you would just type the question in the Q&A window or the chat window, whichever you can reach first. And Bill and Elena, I'm going to invite Hudai to offer some questions or comments, and then have a few questions that we want to tackle, and we'll be glad to answer anything anybody wants to. So, hi, you guys. Thank you. And I'm going to change this view so that if Bill or Elena need me to go to a certain slide, we can easily get there. All right?
Thank you, Marianne.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Elena and Bill. Thank you very much for the very nice presentation. So I have two groups of questions. One is about the Grana Padano and Parmigiano Reggiano. I never, I never know what is the difference between those two cheeses. So, but I know that there are some restrictions of the producing the milk for those cheese. For the Grana Padano, I think the canola and distiller byproducts are restricted, I think. Is that right?
Yes, it is. And the same restrictions are for Parmigiano Reggiano as well.
Okay, I thought about the silage, the corn silage. The Grana Padano producers are allowed to use silage or not?
So Grana Padano producers are allowed to use silages, while the Parmigiano Reggiano producer cannot. And that has an explanation in the milk transformation, because during the process and the production of Parmigiano Reggiano, they cannot use any additives, let's say, while in the Grana Padano they can add an enzyme that is the lysozyme that actually stabilize the milk. So the risk, let's say, is that with the fermented feed there is the possibility of spora, okay, that are inside the barn to get in the milk, okay, and to contaminate the milk, and then destroy the wheels when they are aging. So since Parmigiano Reggiano during the cheese production cannot add this enzyme, they avoid the use of silages in order to eliminate the risk of spora inside the milk and then in the wheels.
Okay, thank you. Which one is produced more in Italy, the Parmigiano or Grana Padano?
Say that again, Uday.
Which one is produced more, and I mean the volume?
Oh, for the volume, also because of the area of production, is Grana Padano.
Grana Padano.
Mm-hmm.
Uday, okay. I'm going to interrupt just a second. Elena, why no canola?
So
that was another question.
So it is for the old, I think the old hybrid of canola. So there is this, the old hybrid, let's say, where transferring bad taste, they said, to the milk and then to the cheese. And so they decided back then to avoid this risk, so they eliminated the possibility to use canola, even if I know now that there are hybrid different hybrid with less anti-nutritional factors that maybe better, let's say, but in order to, avoid the risk, they are going to say, okay, no, we are not going to use it.
Do those hybrids carry with them also the possibility of restriction because some of them are GMOs?
No, no. There are some, lines that, so some cheese factories that produce only, GMO free, but that is a different story. It's a side production, but is not mandatory for all.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to horn in, Hudai. Go ahead.
No problem. So I think you mentioned about the calf weaning, but on the Angelotti farms, I think.
Yes.
So I think the cows were consuming about 3 kilograms of starters at the weaning time.
Yeah.
So when do you wean the calves at this farm? How much? How old? The cows?
They are weaned by 75 days. They stay there, so they are weaned in group. They have access to the starter since the beginning, and by the end, the weaning period, the milk is decreased little by little in within 10 days, let's say, and in that moment they start to increase the consumption of starter, and they reach by the end the 3 kilos.
Okay, they start with 8 liters of milk or milk replacer.
So it is so milk replace. They use milk replacer, and the program. So they are raised, let's say, in hatches till 10 days of live, and they are fed 3 times a day with 2 liters per feeding. So roughly 6 to 8 liters per day, and then when they are moved to the group, they start with 8 liters and they goes up to 15 liters.
So the milk replacers, excuse me. Yeah, milk replacer is 27% protein and 15% fat. Is that correct?
Is 27 protein, 22 fat.
Okay.
And is 15% the concentration.
Okay.
Of milk.
Okay, I think I missed that in the transcribing. So for this afternoon, I can go back in and edit that part.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Elena.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
And Bill, of course, if you want to add something more, jump in.
Okay. Thank you, Elena.
Thank you, Hudai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hudai. I want to ask a couple of questions that we had in the chat or in the Q&A. So Luca wanted a little bit of clarification on the use of biochlor in the transition period on the Bianchesi farm.
Yep. Bill, do you want to answer this? No, he's not here. So I will. So in the Ancelotti dairy farm, we are using, so we are creating a base diet for the far off dry group.
Okay.
And
yes. Elena, sorry, this was on the Bianchesi farm.
Bianchesi.
Yeah. And it's, let's see, Luca clarified further. Are you using biochlor as an anionic or any other interventions? And he missed with what happened what caused 3/4 of the cases of hypocalcemia.
So I don't understand the question. Sorry. Can I read it somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Read that in the questions, but it was also the transition cows and the use of biochlor. I think it was referenced early, close to the compost.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Finally, I've been talking to myself, I guess. Well, I'm used to that. So was the question, why do we use the biochlor in the far off, or just why do we use biochlor in general?
So Luca, 3 or 4 cases of hypocalcemia, perhaps?
Okay, so that was a ration change that Mauro's brother made that with a different forage which the dry matter was different, and probably the mineral content was different as well. And so it probably disrupted the decat effect that we were trying to achieve and the amount that they were eating. So again, dry matter intake is critical in any of these transition programs to know that you're getting the level of metabolizable protein delivered to the small intestine, as well as the predicted anionic effect to regulate the hypocalcemia. The biochlor is used in the far off, in part to acclimate them to the taste of it, which is not an issue with that product as we top dress it there anyway, but it's a good protein source to help stimulate metabolizable protein in that group. And the anionic effect is noted to help suppress udder edema formation as well. And so we start with a low anionic effect there, and it progresses to a full effect in the close-up. Do you want to add anything to that, Elle, or did I get it?
No, you got perfectly.
Okay. Thank you. Bill, so given that you were talking to yourself earlier, were there comments you were making that you should say?
No, I was just I was answering questions, but Elle did great, and that's her backyard. So the big thing there is the concern about spores transferred to any of the cheeses, and the fact that the Grana Padano uses a lysozyme to destroy any potential spore formation in the cheese, but Parmigiano Reggiano wants to eliminate any access to spores and hence no fermented feeds. But not that it couldn't happen from other sources, but again, they're mitigating the risk as best they can.
Okay, thanks. And as an aside, in some work that I'm doing here on some aging of cheese from a farm, goat dairy farm, I do notice seasonality in some of the formation of what I get for molds on outside of the cheeses, and I don't doubt that might be linked to the use of some of the feeds. It's different at some points. I have a question so Bill and Elena, you mentioned the use of a product that helps contribute to microbial terroir and certain bacillus species against Clostridium. Do you know if any such products are registered in Europe?
I believe the Certilis product is getting registered in the EU or in that theater of operation. I don't know the specifics. They're the only ones that I'm aware of that are pursuing it, unless there are some products that originate in the EU, but I'm not familiar with any that are. So I can find out and get back to you, Marianne. And Arm & Hammer now owns the company, the Microbial Terroir Group, that developed this strategy, this technology. And so I could reach out to them and find out what the status of things is, but I don't know. Elle, do you know offhand from interacting?
Not really. So for now, it's not available, and so
The Certilis product is not available, correct?
No, not at all in Europe, not yet.
Yeah, but I thought that was being submitted for licensing.
All right. Question: if no silages are allowed, and I know you'll have good answers for this, what tricks do you use to maximize dry matter intake?
That's a good one.
Try to convince producers to grow quality forages, as with any dairy system. Okay, rule number one. So, go ahead, Elle. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, don't worry. So the strategies is to, of course, harvest high quality forages, as Bill said, and then they can use actually grass hay, of course, alfalfa hay, and they try to maximize recently the use of also wheat hay, for example, that bring a lot of high quality fiber, and the strategies in the high producing dairy farms in the Parmigiano Reggiano area is to increase as much as possible the digestibility, the fiber digestibility, and then to chop it as fine as possible. Another thing that they can do is also add some water in order to keep away the dust and to keep everything together and avoid the sorting problem. But with those strategies put it in place in the farm we have visited, they reach roughly 28 dry matter intake without any problem.
Can I add something?
Yes.
So Elena said it, but I want to emphasize it. Particle size. The European TMRs, in part because of the TMR mixers, the self-loading TMR mixers that process basically twice, and just the diet formulation strategy, their TMRs are very fine. Historically, critically so, but moving forward, probably correctly so. Getting to what Rick Grant and his group at Minor has shown, that if we can maximize her intake so she doesn't have to spend as much time at the bunk loading the rumen with the feed, and these are dry fibers, maybe they're moistened with water, nonetheless, if she doesn't have to chew it as much, she can readily take in more and spend less of her time at the bunk chewing to reduce particle size in order to swallow, and be more efficient with time to lie down and chew her cud, which again, the work has suggested will improve her efficiency at making milk. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is to recognize that probably under most circumstances, we're not going to get the metabolizable protein output from that rumen in the form of microbial protein that we would with a fermented diet. And I think in these instances, the use of bypass protein sources is critical to get MP levels where you want, especially given the fact that the name of the game in Parmigiano Reggiano is milk protein, specifically milk casein. And so in order to achieve the most optimum components in milk, and their fat is not the big player, obviously they want the protein. The embracing the use of high quality bypass protein sources, soy in this instance, is, I think, paramount, okay, for success.
And to add to this, I would encourage anyone who perhaps missed Rick Grant's webinar in June. He did talk about that quite a bit, and you can find that in our archived webinars. Also, when we visited Italy, I recall the forges were just beautiful, and they employ such techniques as even dryers in order to get that hay dry. Correct, Bill, Elena?
Correct. Yes, many producers will dry the bales, not wait for the field curing, but they'll force the drying with controlled heat so they don't damage the protein with Maillard reactions. But yeah, that technology is definitely employed.
So I'm looking at our conversation, and it looks like we have no more questions, at least not presently. Do Bill, Elena, Di, anything you would like to leave as parting discussion before we come to tonight's webinar?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining. I know it's a struggle.
Well, so if it wasn't obvious to the most casual observer, this was not scripted, and this was completely spontaneous. And to throw this jumble at Marianne, to have her edit it and make it look like something like as good as it came out, I'm very impressed with her skills. So I appreciate my partner's contribution, Elena, for doing all of the recording, and Marianne, for you doing the cut and chop and make it look and sound so good. Thank you.
I wish I could do better. So,
It was perfect. Thank you, Marianne.
all right. Well, thank you both. This was, as always, a delight to work with you both. I feel like we learned so much. I really, really enjoy the tours despite the issues. And my favorite person is Patricia. She's just fantastic. And I have to somehow frame that picture of her when her husband finally admits to getting it that she is in charge. Bill and Paula, greetings, and unmute your mic. We'll start tackling questions as they come in the question and answer window or in the chat window. I have a few questions here, but Paula, if you're ready, I'll give you the option to lead off with some questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, Bill.
Good evening.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here.
Please.
The first one, I'm looking at it. The first one is about BioChlor. How do you use it in terms of quantity per animal and per day, and with which other ingredients you mix it?
Are we talking about a top dress, or are we talking about in the TMR when they say with which other ingredients? I'll address both. Bianchesi Farm top dress is half of it. I believe and again, the level of BioChlor is adjusted based upon the pH in response to the cations in the diet to maintain an anionic ration and a pH of somewhere between 6 and 6.5, maybe a little bit lower than 6. BioChlor can be top dressed successfully because it's palatable. At Bianchesi's, because we're giving extra sugar at that point and an extra supplemental protein, it's all mixed together and they eat it that way. The emphasis there being that we're trying to adapt the rumen for the diet that's coming after they freshen. We're trying to get metabolizable protein up 1,300 grams if possible. And again, we're trying to mitigate hypocalcemia by maintaining the anionic effect. And so the beauty of anionic diets and products like BioChlor is they give us the means to do surveillance and do monitoring on the farms in terms of intakes and such, and knowing that the ingredients are being fed or that some of the components haven't changed. You know, so much of our failure on dairies is the inherent variation that we never know is taking place. Well, this is one way to monitor for that variation and control it. And so it's a form of process control, and consistency is what the best dairies thrive on. So did that address the question, or was there more? Hello?
Okay.
Oh.
Perfect. Thank you. Marian, I have a couple of questions.
Please.
Yes.
May I go
You
on?
want to keep going?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. The next one is about bacilli. You talked about the use of bacilli. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. Company by the name of Microbial Terroir basically has developed this technology whereby they do the genetic evaluation of the pathogens and select strains of non-pathogenic organisms such as Bacillus subtilis that are known to produce substances that will suppress the growth of the pathogens such as Clostridium. This is a tremendous technology because it affords us the opportunity to avoid antibiotics for the prevention or hopefully mitigation of disease. And so the bacillus strains are determined based upon cultures taken on site from forages, from manure, the environment, to understand what the genetic profile of the pathogens is, and then they go about selecting the bacillus that will produce the right inhibitors for those organisms. This is approved in the US. I know there's approval that's going to take place in the EU. I don't know where else it is improved, but as nutritionists that are always watching for enteric diseases and other problems that the rational get blamed for, this could be a tool that would be tremendously beneficial for all of us. Plus, even if a herd does not have these pathogens challenging continuously, there are studies ongoing that would suggest that the feeding of these bacilli will actually improve production and performance of the cows. And so there might be a benefit above and beyond just the prevention of the pathogens. There might actually, because that's a clinical entity that we're going after, but perhaps there's a subclinical side of this that we don't realize is there all the time. And this would be one way to go after the subclinical and have that expressed as more productivity. So I'm not sure that paper's out yet, but I know it's in process. Okay.
Bill, can you tell me who's doing the research on that?
Well, Arm & Hammer bought the company, so they're funding it.
Okay.
Okay, so it will be a Church and Dwight Arm & Hammer product that is marketed, and they will they're sponsoring the research at different universities, is my understanding. I think Oklahoma State was one, and there might be some on the West Coast. If Elliot's still on, he could chime in.
Yeah. Well, he can only write in. He can't chime unless
right. Yeah,
I could allow him to talk, but that seems excessive.
Oh, please don't. Just kidding.
Excessive and permissive. Yeah. He said, no, don't ask him to talk. All right. Paula, I have a couple questions. If you want to take a break, or do you want to follow up?
Go on, Marianne.
Okay. So on the Panizza farm, when he mentioned that in the future he maybe would be moving to 10 robots, is that walking away from that parlor?
That's a very good question. I don't know his intention, but I would suspect the parlor will still be in force in some capacity. Okay, they may have 10 robots, but I still see them using the parlor to a certain extent. Now,
the way it looks, it just looks like he has got the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
In terms of both managing a parlor and managing robots.
Yeah, and so there is one advantage to the parlor is when you have any number of cows that are not accepting of robots, and you have to make a decision. If you have to fetch a cow constantly, usually you sell it to the neighbor who doesn't have a robotic system, and that if she's a good cow, she just goes in a conventional parlor. So there can be advantages to having a hands-on parlor for a percentage of the cows to get them started when they're first fresh and such, to do evaluation. I'm not saying it's essential, but I've seen it done both ways. And I don't know for sure what Luca and Patricia plan on doing. It's a very good question. I can ask Elena and get back to whoever asked the question, but I don't see it stopping right away.
All right. My second question. Does in the production of milk for Parmigiano Reggiano, are there any regulations in the feeding frequency? Because I think this morning there was some discussion of the use of particle length to maintain a non-sortable TMR, and also water was referenced. Does the addition of water in that sort of hot environment maybe create some heating and fermentation, or is it just not there long enough?
It certainly could, in theory. It hasn't proven to be an issue because they permit it. That being said, when we first started working with Sergio and Roberto, things were permitted that are not permitted now. So sometimes it's rather surreptitious as to what can be done and can't be done. But I do not believe there is any restriction on how often you feed and such, because some herds may have Lely automatic feeders that go around and feed as needed. So I can't comment that there is any restriction. And to your point about the diets are fine to prevent sorting, and also so that they take a minimum of amount of time loading the rumen, they can go down, they can get back and lie down and chew their cud and optimize their production, because they don't have to spend time standing there reducing the particle size in order to swallow the bolus.
Right.
So, I'll make a note on that, and again, I'll feed back with you on this when I get some better answers.
Yeah, I just wondered, not so much as prohibition on too frequent, but a requirement of a certain frequency. And do you think that use of maybe regulations that weren't in place, things that were allowed and aren't allowed, is a way of controlling the milk market?
Absolutely, because we took that herd higher than any other Parmesan Reggiano herd had been prior to that time, and it got a lot of attention. And so, and we didn't do it with anything illicit. We just used technologies that we would have used anywhere. Well, they were not specified that you couldn't use them. They just never said you could. And so they said, okay, now you can't. So that's how the game is played. When the cheese mafia speaks, everybody listens.
Yes. Paula, are you ready to go back to some more questions?
Okay. So my next question is, why does close-up diet decaf is affected by humidity?
I'm sorry, Paula, I'm not sure I understood. Can you repeat?
Yes. Why does the close-up diet is affected by humidity?
So I'll repeat for you, Bill. Why is the
Yes,
close-up
please.
diet decad? Why is it affected by humidity?
Why is the
Or is
decad?
it affected by humidity? Paula, do you think it's also heat, and in that there would be more stress? Do you think that's the question?
No, dry matter content of the diet, I think.
Okay, so I'm guessing, and this is a guess, that this gets back to what Mauro was said when his brother changed the humidity of a feed ingredient, or a feed ingredient with a different humidity, meaning moisture. And it threw off the total dry matter of the diet and probably the mineral balance too. And that resulted in milk fevers because it was no longer an effective anionic diet. So I'm assuming, if that's the question, that was a situation where an ingredient changed, the dry matter changed, so they weren't eating the right amount of dry matter, nor were they probably getting a diet that was balanced anionically. But regarding moisture in a decad diet, I mean, we add water routinely in the States in our close-up diets because they're so heavy with straw and other ingredients to reduce the sorting. And so I don't have a problem with that as long as we understand how much dry matter they're eating, which is the most important part of the equation, to know that they're going to get the metabolizable protein, and also that they're going to get adequate suppression of pH to affect calcium mobilization in the blood. And that's, again, why this is such a great technology, because you can monitor the urine pHs to know if you're getting an effective impact from the anionic feed. So if I didn't answer it, I apologize. I'm willing to take another shot at it, but Marianne, is there more that?
I'm going to guess that actually, based on the way that Mauro talked about it, he did use the word humidity, not the word moisture.
Yeah.
And I think it's just
Yes.
a translation issue, because that seems like that's sensible. And your answer is in line with anything that makes sense. And also Mauro
Yes.
did say humidity, not moisture. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I meant moisture. Yes.
No, I assume that. Yeah.
We're going to blame Mauro.
Well, he'll
Yes.
blame us. That's fine.
True. Paula,
Okay.
you had a follow-up question. Bill just mentioned the use of monitoring, and you had a question about that.
Yes. Yes, I was going to say that. One attendee asked why to monitor the effect of anionic salts every 2 weeks, as you said. Is it through urine pH?
Yes. Yeah, that's the simplest way, provided you use an effective measure of the pH, whether it's a meter or pH papers that have distinct colors so you can distinguish the pHs. Yeah, to me, it's anytime we can bring people to taking a closer look at the cows, okay, objectively, whether it's for urine pH or for body condition score, whatever, I feel that we learn a lot, okay, because too often this group is neglected and they're just put there until they're fresh. And so it forces us to pay more attention to a very pivotal group on the dairy. And so, I'm an advocate of that for that reason alone. But also the pH is information that we can use to adjust the diet accordingly, or to find out if we're not managing properly in terms of feed construction.
Okay, perfect. And the last one, do you think it is important to use yeast in close-up diets to improve ruminant health?
Yeast?
Yes.
So it's a good question, because yeast brings with it any number of things, because yeast is not yeast, right? Depends which product. We use Celmanax because it's yeast that's been taken apart into the active ingredients. And so it's a much more effective and efficient way of getting those yeast components to work in that rumen environment, where a lot of change is taking place as she adapts to a new diet, okay, as she's getting ready to go from a very low starch diet, high fiber diet, to one that's going to be lower in NDF, higher in fermentable carbohydrates. And so, the changes there, and as we indicated, we try not to change more than 10 points of starch percentage on a dry matter basis, or 5 points of fermentable starch on a dry matter basis. And nonetheless, things are changing. And so to have a protective mechanism in place, such as a yeast product, and again, we use Celmanax, but a yeast product in general, I think, is going to give you the benefits, okay, of being somewhat protective to some of the insults that might come about, despite our best intentions of delivering the right ration with the right numbers. Stuff happens, as we know, right? And again, the only reason I mentioned Celmanax is that because we've had very good response with it, and that's what we use. But if someone says they have another one that they like, all ears, I'll listen. But yeah, I'm an advocate.
Okay, Elena,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, Paula, keep going.
Yes. Okay. I have one last question.
Please.
What? Which ionophore are you using in close-up diets, and how much do you use?
Ionophore?
Yes.
Well, in the EU, you cannot feed an ionophore. You can administer a bolus of an ionophore as a ketosis prevention. And so that's a measured dose that is administered once in the dry period, and that's it. There is no feeding of ionophore in the EU legally. Okay, so it doesn't really factor in to the thought process. I'd have to look and see. It's called Keckstone, and I'd have to see what the dose is in that bolus. I don't know, to be honest with you, and not everyone uses it. So it's a hit or miss.
Paula, are ionophores used in Argentina typically?
We are able to, yes.
Okay. All right. I
Yes.
think Paula is.
Yeah, we use a lot.
Okay. Okay. Paula,
Thank you
I
very
think
much.
we
Oh, thank you,
with her
Paula.
questions. Bill, thank you so much for being the representative question answerer tonight. It was stated that everyone misses Elena.
Of course. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, you're sweet too. So Paula, thanks again for joining so much. Paula Alanes, as always, I thank her. And we will see you all next month. All right. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao.